Bob, thank you very much. And I'm going to ask you one more time to give Steve Smith some applause for a very good presentation. In my mind, Steve is one of the most knowledgeable individuals in our industry on air quality. Glad we were able to have him here today. Hello, I'm Dennis Winkler, COO of Winkler Public Relations, and I have the honor of moderating this morning's panel, and this is a chemical manufacturing panel. I will tee up some questions. I want to ask the audience, please submit questions on the Slido app. Those will appear on the screen here, and as we have time, we will get to the audience questions. So we want to make it, audience participation. So please submit those. Let me introduce the three guests. See how they're sitting? Okay, yeah. First up, to my immediate left, is Bob Bradshaw. He's been site manager of INEOS Olefins and Polymers USA Battleground Manufacturing Complex since 2011, and he has more than 37 years in the petrochemical industry. Bob is a graduate of Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri. He is also immediate past chair of the East Harris County Manufacturers Association and an executive board member of the Economic Alliance. Bob, I want to thank you for your leadership within industry and also within a lot of community groups, and one in particular that I know that's close to your heart, and that's Special Olympics Texas. Know you've been busy with changes and expansions within the INEOS family of companies, and hopefully we'll be able to hear some of the insights from that. Next we have Gary Piana. Gary is a plant manager with Chevron Phillips Chemical Company, and in a occurring theme, he is the current chairman of the East Harris County Manufacturers Association. Gary earned a mechanical engineering degree from Rutgers University in New Jersey. And Gary, we look forward to hearing some things about industry, but also overall about Chevron Phillips Chemical. So, and as you heard, he is pinch hitting. We did not exactly reach down to the minor leagues. Some kind of way we found a way to get up and bring in somebody even more knowledgeable than other speakers scheduled. So, and then to my far left, we have Jim Haney, who is with the Dow Chemical Company. And I guess I'm going to see if I get the title right, Jim. It's Business Manufacturing and Technology Director for the Packaging and Specialty Plastics business. He's in that role, he's accountable to Dow's global business teams for manufacturing, engineering, and technologies for the safe and reliable operations of the plant facilities. Jim has a BS in chemical engineering from Clemson. He joined Dow in 1989 in Plaquemines, Louisiana. Bob Charlet, that should make you happy. You got another fellow Louisianian up here. But through marriage, he developed a bit of a dual loyalty for another set of Tigers. And he mentioned that he's been in Greater Houston for 11 years now, and says the family has kind of become true Texans, and pulling for the Astros and the Texans. But it's pretty easy when you have roster spots filled by Clemson and LSU alums on those teams. So, Jim, glad to have you here. And again, I know you guys have had some significant acquisitions, and you've been busy fitting a lot of companies into the portfolio, so we look forward to hearing from you as well this morning. Now, I'm going to tee up the first question, and I'm going to take a seat with these guys and ask additional questions, and your questions as they come in. So again, slido.com, please. But to open up the conversation, I'm going to ask each of the gentlemen to tell you a little bit about their company, the people, plants, and products that they manufacture and provide to us to, how do we say it, make our modern world better. So, gentlemen, start off. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. Thanks for weathering the storm. We do appreciate y'all coming out. Talk a little bit about INEOS. So INEOS is a privately held company. You may have heard Jim Radcliffe owns about 95% of the company. We are a global manufacturer of petrochemicals, specialty chemicals, and oil products. INEOS is divided into about 30 different business units. We operate in about 26 countries around the world and have about 160 sites. INEOS employs worldwide about 21,000 individuals. Headquartered in outside of London, It's a young company, quite honestly. The INEOS, as you look at it today, is probably only about 20 years old, but has grown rapidly, mainly through acquisition, but more recently through investment, grassroots investment. And I'll talk a little bit about those later. As far as my site is concerned, it's part of the business unit that is INEOS, Olefins and Polymers, USA. We're located in La Porte. We employ about 350 employees on site and have about an equal number of contractors on site. Main manufacturing is polyethylene, and also we have one polypropylene unit. INEOS is active in the community. You may have heard of some of the activities that we sponsor with the school districts. We do a Go Run for Fun. Mr. Radcliffe is very much focused on wellness and pushing that education to the grade school level. So we'll sponsor Go Run for Fun in the community, which basically tries to teach our young children the value of exercise, tying that with education, but the value of exercise and creating a fun environment to have that exercise completed. I guess that's about it as far as INEOS and my sites. I'll turn it over to Gary.
Thank you, Bob. And thanks, Dennis. Again, Gary Piana, Chevron Phillips Chemical Company. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. My thanks as well to all of you who braved the weather to come here. It's a challenging time right now. So it's an exciting time to be part of Chevron Phillips Chemical. We are growing and have been. I, like Bob, have about 37 years in industry, all in manufacturing, and it's a great career. Enjoying it very much. Chevron Phillips Chemical is a 50-50 joint venture between our owners, Chevron Corporation and Phillips 66. And as I said, we continue to grow. We're international. We have several sites here in the Houston area, which are vital to us. One right here in Pasadena on Jefferson Road off 225. We make polyethylene. Also our Cedar Bayou site on I-10 in Baytown. We have multiple business units there, alpha olefins, polyethylene, polyalpha olefins, and we have several ethylene crackers there. We recently built our U.S. Gulf Coast project and completed that, which was a new ethylene cracker at Cedar Bayou, and derivative units, polyethylene loops at our Old Ocean facility down by Sweeney, Texas, another one of our vital units in the area. We also have a specialty chemicals plant up in the Conroe area. All of these sites are doing well. We have very active in the community, as Bob described INEOS as well. We are very active here in Pasadena and in the Chambers County area and Baytown with our Cedar Bayou plant. Very glad to be here this morning, and we have some significant growth plans going forward. We've recently announced what we call our LPP. There's an expansion project over in the Middle East in the nation of Qatar. And we have a joint venture we've announced here on the U.S. Gulf Coast, also with our partners, Qatar Petroleum. So, again, glad to be here this morning, and thank you all.
All right, thanks. Once again, my name is Jim Haney. I've been with Dow about 30 years, a little over 30 years now, and combination manufacturing, some maintenance and supply chain along the way. I'd say as far as our company goes, we're actually a renewed company in Dow as of April 1st of this year. Following our merger with DuPont a few years ago, or starting the merger, we finished out the spin to the three companies this year, just finished out the last spin in June. And so Dow is now I would say, a much more focused company on our core markets that we participate in, whether it be packaging activities, transportation, consumer, healthcare, those kind of things. That's our main focus going forward, and that incorporates some of the heritage DuPont chemistries and sites, as well as some of our own, historically Dow sites. The new company is about 30,000 employees worldwide, a little over north of 40 billion, close to 50 now, billion dollars in revenue. And as I said, I work in an area in plastics. It's probably about half, depending on which metric you want to look at. It's about a little over half of that of the Dow Chemical Company as it stands today. If you look at our operations in Texas, we've been active in Texas for 79 years. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but we started just a little bit south of Lake Jackson there in Freeport, and started expanding Dow beyond our headquarters area in Midland, Michigan. And this was one of the first places we came was to Texas as we started expanding. And since that time, we've grown to over 7,000 employees in Texas. We have multiple sites, some right here close by in Deer Park and LaPorte, sites in Beaumont, now with our Heritage DuPont site in Sabine River in Orange, down in Seadrift in Victoria. We also have sites. Pretty big presence, about $800 million a year in local spending, across our sites. So, Texas is very, very important to Dow, not only from past, but also as we continue to grow. We recently completed some major expansion work as well on the Gulf Coast, both in Louisiana and Texas, and recently started up new ethylene cracker as well as downstream plastics facilities in our Freeport plant. Finally, talking about community involvement, this is fall is always an important time for Dow. That's when we activate our United Way campaigns around the country, and our two big campaigns in the Houston area as well as down in Freeport are very active. Includes some volunteer activities as well as employee giving campaigns. And my final comment is one thing that we're also promoting widely globally across Dow, but we've also had local participation, is our Pulling Our Weight campaign, and that's where we're going and helping partner with local communities to clean up our waterways and help clean up beaches. And I think we'll talk a little bit more in a little bit about sustainability and about plastic waste in the environment. So thank you.
Hey, Jim, thank you for teeing that one up. We've already had an audience question about that, and I promise you we will get to sustainability. I want to start with another audience question, and I'm going to answer it and then let y'all give the real answer. This is, we've had tremendous growth on the Gulf Coast in the chemical manufacturing. When do you expect capital investment to peak? My answer is I hope not anytime soon, but would you guys please give the real answer?
All right, yeah, I'll start, and I think it's as long as the Gulf Coast continues to be a place where we have very attractive cost competitive feedstock, and it starts with feedstock for us. We'll continue to see interest in investment as the world economy grows, and there's still. Even though we may be in a little bit of a slowdown at the moment, we know that it won't last for long, and we'll see economies continue to grow. And for Dow, the Gulf Coast is a strategic location for growth for us, both in Texas and Louisiana. And we've got other projects teed up right now, and in different stages, whether it be in early front-end loading to some that we're getting close to doing gate reviews here at the end of the year to continue our growth. So as long as we can get competitive feedstock, as long as we've got access to strong supply chains and logistics opportunities, and most importantly, as long as we continue to develop good resources from a labor standpoint in the Houston area, we'll continue to see growth.
Well, I have to ask you a question since you raised it, because everyone sitting in the audience wants to know, can you tell them about those upcoming projects?
Yeah, I think, I can, somewhat vague with some of them. We've got some larger programs that are, like I said, I can't speak to specifically, but we do have one plant that we're planning to, or we're doing front-end loading on right now, another plastics polyethylene facility that we're looking at and would be located here somewhere on one of our Texas sites.
Bob, you want to take a shot at that?
On the expansions?
Yes,
Or
no, the expan-
when the,
Are we getting to the peak?
well, I was instructed not to embarrass the family, but I think I will go ahead and just say 2024, just to have something out there. But no, I think the same thing that Jim said. We're going to continue. INEOS is going to continue to look at investment opportunities. There's some that have been announced. Styrolution's announced some. We've announced an ethylene oxide plant down in our site at Alvin. So there's been a couple of different announcements, and I know there's still items to be studied as well in regards to expansion. I think there's some economics that we need to look at, as far as the worldwide economy kind of slowing down right now and the impact that may have, that may push some of these projects out. Obviously, our discussions with China in regards to tariff has put some question around investment as well. But again, I think we're going to continue to look for opportunities, and that's why some of the items that we'll be talking about in the panel after this panel on workforce development becomes very crucial as well.
Yeah. And Gary, I'm not going to let you steal the thunder from Ron, who's going to be talking to us about lunch on some of the maybe upcoming projects. But let me, since you, Bob, you raised workforce, there are really kind of maybe three issues that we talked a little bit about that could impact us. One is workforce. Again, Jim Griffin will have a tremendous workforce panel following us. The other is transportation, and then the sustainability, everything around plastic. So let's look at transportation. Bob, I think you co-chair the Economic Alliance Transportation Committee. So tell us a little bit about the impacts of transportation or infrastructure in general for your industry.
Okay. I'll start with the transportation piece of it. As Dennis mentioned, I am co-chair with Glenn Royal on the Transportation Committee for the Economic Alliance. And basically, the committee started several years ago, and I inherited that role when I was chairman of ECMA. I replaced Monty Hines, who y'all may remember. But it's really just a committee where we are trying to be the catalyst at getting the right people in a room to talk about what are some of the issues associated with transportation. You heard yesterday about the growth of the port, 50% increase on container movements. You understand what that's going to do to the roads. You start looking at just the general increase in population, but then also the influx of construction workers and other companies into the area as some of these projects get kicked off. It became fairly obvious that we needed the right people in the room to set some priorities. And when I say the right people, we talked about contractors, we talked about owners, TxDOT, Harris County, the mayors, the local municipalities, really tried to sit down and prioritize and give some feedback to TxDOT in regards to what we needed to have done in the area. What came out of that is, some priority given to the connectors at Beltway 8 and Highway 225, the widening of 146 between Red Bluff and Fairmont, a Pell study, the Planning and Environmental Linkage Study, was approved for the 225 corridor between 146 and 610. And really what we're trying, our motivation, get the right people involved, but at the end of the day, I used to work in Chicago, and I had the luxury of being able to commute on a train every day to and from, and when you got tired of taking the train, you drove once, and you went back to the train because you realized what a hassle it was to drive. And we want our employees and our contractors and the people that live in our communities to be able to get home to and from work or to and from wherever they need to get to in a reasonable time and not be so stressed when they get to work. But the committee's doing a great job. We're able, the other improvement that we're looking at is around Port Road. If you look at some of the capital investment that's going on in that area on Port Road, it's going to be critical that we have some improvements down there as well.
When you mentioned, obviously, for the ease of transportation of your products, also for employees getting in. When you are competing for projects, do the corporations look at it also as a safety issue? Do we have safe roads that employees can get to and from? Is that a consideration?
I think it's one of many considerations that go into site selection in regards to, do people actually want to travel to that location? Is there another place where they can make the same type of living in a less stressful environment? So I think it's just one of many factors that go into it.
Okay.
Dennis, even throughout the procurement and construction phases in project site selection, we look at things like how the logistics would support the project. Can the people to construct get in and out reasonably well? How do we move in large pieces of equipment? All that is considered in site selection for projects.
Very good. Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, maybe a raise of hands. Has anybody ever been stuck on the Mississippi River Bridge in Baton Rouge? I see, yeah, show of hands, yes, right? That's how critical transportation can be to, not only, employee satisfaction and citing, decisions when, for projects. And I use that example because Louisiana is still struggling to fix that problem. One thing I can say for Texas is that we typically are proactive in most cases in building infrastructure to support not only the people in the city, but also industry to ensure that we've got reasonable supply chains, from transportation standpoint. So however you can continue to help support that, through, for not only elected officials, but also as being a member in the community, please continue to be proactive and help support building of infrastructure, because it is a key enabler to investment and to industry, as well as to our employees, because we're struggling right now at our site and on the west side of Baton Rouge in Plaquemine with employee retention, where people are just, they've got to travel maybe 15, 20 miles to and from their homes, and they're spending sometimes up to 2 hours in the car, stuck in that traffic on that bridge. So it's not only us traveling from Texas over, but it's, just the local community that struggles with that as well.
All right, let me go ahead and grab another one of the audience questions, because it leads into something, Jim, I know you're on top of, and that is sustainability and the circular economy around plastics. We have a lot of expansion for plastics. Do we see that having an impact, and how are you as industry members managing that sustainability?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this probably a little differently than you'd probably expect, and I see it as an opportunity. The reason I see it as an opportunity is I've not always worked in plastics. I started my career in chlorine and chlorinated organics back when Greenpeace was calling that the devil's chemical. And at that time, the industry kind of worked together, competitors coming together to develop safe handling standards, also public education, and further helped generate innovation and fund innovation to come up with alternative technologies for some of the the downstream products and chemicals that, especially in the refrigerants area, that use chlorine as a raw material. and that industry now is thriving. We still have air conditioning in our homes and in our workplaces, and it generated a whole new area of products and markets just by evolving, from that space. Plastics is no different. It certainly has come on very quickly over the last couple of years. It's much more, in the news, and mainly because of the waste in the oceans. We first, and Dow feels like we should help lead, this effort, and the alliance across all of the producers and users of different plastic materials have banded together to help first work to help support, build infrastructure for waste handling, especially in some of the emerging economies, to keep the material out of our oceans. Believe me, it's not just plastic. Plastic floats so you can see it, but there's other waste that's going to the bottom of the ocean. We've got to work in that space and help fund innovation, but we also have to go improve recyclability of plastics and help our downstream producers develop new products that are easier to recycle and improve the collection of those wastes and get them into the right hands so that we can recycle them effectively. We're also looking at innovating in the space of recycling plastic back to its core energy value, where you can provide feedstock back to some of our plants in that manner. But the world is going to continue, I think, to evolve from an innovation standpoint. Plastics is just too good of a material to ignore. It's in so many parts of our lives now, and because it's so efficient. And we'll just figure out how to continue to manage it properly so that we manage, from start to finish, the entire life cycle of that material. And I'm excited to say that the alliance of producers, manufacturers, in plastics have pledged over $1 billion to fund different innovation projects in this space. So it'll evolve just like the Devil's Chemical evolved back in the late 80s.
Well, let me go ahead and ask a final question and give all three of you a chance for a brief answer. I asked this of the refining panel yesterday. A lot of interest today in our industry as far as how we respond to emergencies and events. Can you each take a moment to talk about your emergency response program and how you work with the local communities when you have something occur within your plant facility?
Yeah, actually, last week we just had a banquet for our volunteers for our emergency response team. But we have and I'm actually humbled to talk about the men and women that do this for us. But we have a very highly trained emergency response volunteer team that, like you heard yesterday, spends time at that world-class facility in College Station at Texas A&M in regards to training. We just recently, in the past 2 years, probably invested several $1 million in new firefighting equipment and response equipment for the site in LaPorte and also our site down in Alvin. We are members of SEMA, which I believe you heard that as well yesterday. And probably in regards to my site in LaPorte, since we are in LaPorte, constant communication with Kristen in LaPorte, Office of Emergency Management in LaPorte. We are a member of the LEPC and an active participant with the LEPC in that area. As part of the new RMP requirements that OSHA came out recently, that joint training, that joint drill is an offer that we make now to the city of LaPorte through the LEPC. So that's basically how we stay in constant contact with them.
Gary, how about at CPChem?
Well, starting out, safety in general is part of who we are. It's part of everything we do. Our sites are VPP STAR certified, part of OSHA's voluntary protection program. In fact, our Pasadena site was just recertified. We go through a recertification process every 3 years, and the Pasadena site was just recognized for STAR for the next 3 years. So it's something we're very proud of. We are members of SEMA, as Bob has indicated. INEOS is, in fact, our emergency response coordinator at the site here in Pasadena is one of the officers in SEMA. And they train locally and at Texas A&M, and we conduct mutual aid drills with member sites. And I'll just mention today, for example, there's communications going on right now about whether or not some of their people and resources may be necessary to help some areas that are struggling with inclement weather. So we're there if the community needs us and the surrounding communities need us, and we're glad and proud to be part of that. This is the safety of our people and the communities that surround us is our primary focus.
Okay, great. Jim, anything you want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, I believe, emergency response starts with leadership. You have to have strong, procedures, command and control type procedures, and trained leadership to be able to handle emergencies. How small or how big that they can potentially be. And so my comment will be, Dow has an intense focus at each one of our sites on training site emergency managers, and it's a rotating job. It's an on-call. So when you're take your duty as site emergency manager, typically it's for a 1-week period, and you're on call 24/7 for that site. If anything happens that has to that has escalation potential, and we believe that that's first and foremost our primary line of defense, other than our obvious first responders that we partner with depending on our site and particular community. But I would just say we spend a lot of time educating our leaders at the site, the ones that are picked to serve in this duty of site emergency managers, so that they know how to handle the emergency command and control structure, as well as who to contact, and also and I've gone through this myself, media training, to ensure that we communicate properly as to real-time situations and what's going on, so that we can manage expectations and response outside of the site effectively.
Well, great. Well, hey, our time has actually expired. I'm going to ask the audience to thank you all for a very informed panel. Thank you.